in the world of sustainability. And just from a point of jest, I guess Sagility is the only firm here who are present here for the beauty of the knowledge and knowledge sharing and partnership on sustainability, because this gathering neither has my client market nor does it have my talent market. So we still thought of actually being a partner in this activity because we thought that, you know, we could share ideas with like-minded people with like-minded objectives and get inspired. So I think that kind of sums up what Sagility's commitment to the world of sustainability is.
Absolutely, absolutely. And many congratulations on signing the SBTI, as well as
Thank
good
you.
luck for following that up. Coming to you, Shaayak, I think as I was listening to her responses, I was just wondering that maybe quite a few of people here who are already in this space, maybe having some experiences on certain organizations, but you happen to be serving multiple organizations in this space of carbon. And what do you think are the challenges that organizations typically have in adopting this, as well as maybe if you could also highlight what are their typical economic and strategic opportunities that that the businesses are able to gain out of doing this?
Thank you, Smita, and it's a pleasure to be here in front of all of you. I think what we've learned over the last almost 2 years now is that the first step, I think Afroz had a great point in the morning, right? The first step and the first challenge that organizations face when they think about sustainability is actually quantifying, measuring what sustainability means for them. This begins first with an identification exercise of what really applies to them, and then the data that sits within the organization, where does it go? So I think that's the first challenge that companies face, because what we know, especially when we're talking about net zero and carbon neutrality, is that 70% of emissions come from 6 sectors: power, steel, cement, automotive, aviation, and agriculture. So once you are able to identify what percentage of your emissions are coming from which value chain, right, through measurement, then it becomes easier to abate them. And for abatement, right, when we're talking about the technologies available for abatement for your carbon, right, just your power adoption, renewable energy, green hydrogen, and then lesser levels like carbon capture, reforestation, as well as sustainable agriculture. All of these exist. It's about using the right lever for you. When it comes to the vast economic opportunities that exist within the sector for all of us here, I think we've all noticed when it comes to solar, not only is solar power now competitive to coal, it's expected to drop even further. Renewable energy prices per unit are expected to drop even further. So we're going to experience that benefit, especially if we become net generators. I think another interesting point to note is that the India of 2050, right, 75% of it has not been built yet. So there's a huge opportunity for green advancement and green adoption from the start, right? Because our power demand is going to grow 8-fold. Our cement and steel demand is going to grow 6-fold. And for organizations planning their growth within India during this time frame, embracing sustainability at the start is not only a source of risk mitigation and risk awareness because of regulations passed by the government, but a huge scope for economic opportunity, financial opportunity, and reputational growth. Because if you look at millennials, Gen Z, and generations later, right, which are going to exceed, and India is anyway a young country, which are going to exceed the baby boomers, etc. in number, right? We all care. We all care about sustainability, and this is not only your talent source, but also your client source.
Absolutely, Shaayak, and thanks for sharing that. Uh, I kind of agree with you on most of it, and probably since the morning we've been hearing about a lot of situation here and a lot of circumstances where people are either understanding it but not doing enough, or probably they're looking at their internal rate of returns to be able to do what they think is right. Interestingly, Anup, you just mentioned a very good statement that you've seen a rise, significant rise of awareness on sustainability in last couple of years. So that is a very a very, very hopeful situation and a positive statement. And so I want you to share with us, if you could, your journey on this with respect to particularly your initiatives around carbon neutrality with L&T. But besides this also, if you could highlight some of the, the changes that you are noticing throughout your career as in the sustainability space, particularly from the awareness building.
Yeah, thanks, Smita. Uh, well, regarding the sustainability journey, and I speak with respect to the L&T context, which is essentially present in construction and infrastructure projects to the extent of 80% of its revenue, and the balance mainly in manufacturing, reality, and a few other small businesses. So around 3 years ago, we decided at the senior most level with the top management team that we will set our carbon neutrality targets and also water neutrality targets. A lot of work was done by a dedicated task force comprising of environmental engineers uh, to look at what could be the pathways by which our emissions would or could increase if we did nothing about the situation and we continued as we have been doing in the past many years. And what are the various options and technologies that we could use to influence that change and bring down our emissions over a period of time. After looking at a multiple of scenarios and evaluating what is possible and building in some ambition, we decided that 2040 is the year when we will be carbon neutral and 2035 is for water neutrality. So now having done that, in order to get it implemented across the organization, we broke it up into 5-year targets, aligned with our 5-year business planning exercise, which has been something going on for the last 20 years. So keeping that in mind, FY21, 2021 was the baseline year, and we built 5-year targets with keeping in mind a 5-year scenario, and within that, an annual targeting of various metrics which influence emission. Now when we do that and we see and we took stock of our performance over the last 2-3 years on a quarterly or a half-yearly basis, what we found were the two big challenges. One is the common that may be seen by other companies also, particularly those in the industrial, manufacturing, brick and mortar kind of a space, is that we are present in a growing India. And all of us want to grow, and not grow incrementally by some 5 or 7 percentage, but 10%, 8%. Those are the kind of ambitions every year, and even more than that. And if we grow, then emissions are going to increase. The challenge is how do we uh, bring about a downtrend in the absolute emission curve over a period of time. How to identify what is that inflection point going to be in which year, after which, even though we continue to grow on the business side, we will not increase our emissions and we will start to reduce it. That was the question we asked ourselves when we tried to frame our pathways for carbon neutrality. And we saw that with the various things visible in terms of what we could do, and also looking at some new technologies on the horizon which could fructify into breakthroughs in terms of cost and scalability. We felt that by the year 2026, we could start to flatten the curve, and maybe in another 2 or 3 years, we can start to reduce emissions. All this means that there has to be a continuous effort in the meanwhile on reducing our emission intensity. And that has begun to take place since the last 12 months or so. And I would say, given the kind of actions taken on both the scope 1 and the scope 2, in the current financial year, in the first half of the year, we have seen a 20% reduction on emission intensity as compared to the on a year-on-year basis. But our business has grown by a lot more than that, so absolute emissions has certainly increased. But the sensitivity and awareness of people within the organization and across the country has also increased. There are a number of people to whom we reach out to for solutions, for innovations, and number of pilots and experiments are in progress to see how we can continue on this journey. The second challenge that we face, maybe it is more unique to a company like L&T, which is engaged in projects and construction, is that our construction activities at any point of time is spread across 700 odd construction sites across the country. And these sites are temporary in nature. Activity over there could take place for anything between 18 months to say 40, 45 months, in a few cases a bit longer than that. And energy consumption and the related emission in these sites are also a function of the stage in which the construction activity is taking place. So there are a number of such factors. Some of them are very remote into the hinterlands of the country, where there's no option but to use diesel. But even then, there are solutions possible. That is what we realized. As far as sensitization is concerned, as I mentioned to Smita earlier, yes, certainly I have seen both within the company and outside also in the last 3 to 4 years, a lot of change taking place, a lot of awareness and concern for the environment. We are all seeing the real effects in terms of extreme weather kind of situations, the global warming that is taking place, literally the warming and that is taking place. So everybody is concerned about it and people want to do something and make a difference in their businesses and also outside. And I would say the government has led from the front, announcing its commitments and announcing a number of schemes and initiatives. And I think corporates are also stepping forth. But I think I'm jumping ahead of the session. Smita, so,
No worries. We'll get back to you
yeah.
with on this question very quickly. But thank you for sharing that. And in fact, on this whole thought, Smita, I'm going to come to you. This thought of building awareness. What I realize is a lot of times when we are talking about carbon emissions, people are very limited in their thought process to only emitting processes. They don't look at their whole supply chain in terms of every product and service that you are having to serve that causes certain kind of emissions, even the waste that you're generating. Now, all of this, even if we build the awareness, we need alternate solutions for it. We need better knowledge to handle this. What role do you see of international I mean, particularly in the backdrop of with having COP in our backdrop? What role do you see of international partnership for knowledge sharing and making each other understand and educating people on what could be done for carbon neutrality together? Yeah.
I think one of the biggest challenges that we have is the organized sector will have ways and means of achieving what they have to achieve from a sustainability as well as from a pure carbon neutrality, net zero perspective. I think the challenge really is with the unorganized sector. So while we do our supplier code of conduct and then we go down our downstream processes and partners and engage them in our overall sustainability journey, there are people far beyond those lines. For example, the supplier to your supplier. Earlier when we were discussing, I was talking about this. Large corporates don't go and buy Domex to clean their, office toilets. They would be going to a lower local product, but which has got an ISI mark and all that. And while doing that, do we know who the supplier of chemicals to that manufacturer is? And where is his effluence going? And so on and so forth. So it's the unorganized sector. For example, every time I fly over Delhi, I look at the settlement across, along the Yamuna River, and I just keep thinking, how does one get them under the sustainability belt? It's extremely expensive to be sustainable as an organization. And therefore, I was speaking to Mr. Bagai earlier today, because we were sharing the same table. And I was saying that maybe the government should come up with an ESG light version, for the unorganized sector. Anyway, I'm digressing. But I think we've got to really look at it, the concept of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam comes back. And it's, and I think it was very nicely encapsulated in the G20 summit in September, where they talked about one family, one earth, one future, right? Now let's just look at the real examples of where collaboration is needed. I think one of the biggest unanswered areas, we talk about carbon sinks, right? Look at the Amazon jungle. It's the biggest lung of this world. But the largest part of that jungle lies in a country which probably does not have the wherewithal to maintain it. And therefore, I think if that is the lung to the world, is the world as focused on the Amazon jungle, in the preservation of that jungle? It's after all the only lung that we have left, okay? So obviously, there is no other go to being collaborative. Okay, and I don't think any of us have even touched the tip of the iceberg called collaboration on carbon neutrality or net zero or whatever fancy term you want to give there. I think the second piece is in terms of, even if we look at the cyclical economy that we were talking about, recover, recycle, reuse, a refuse of one organization can be the raw material for the other organization, right? I mean, for somebody like McDonald's, they did it themselves, where they took their cooking oil, their cooked oil, and they converted it into fuel to fuel their own trucks, which distributed their material. Great story. But there are stories which are not so great. But I think the positive thing, instead of lamenting on the negatives, I think the positive is the movement that's going on. So for example, one of the biggest bane of the textile industry is the amount of water that is used to create textile, right? But Levi's has now done some research and come up with what they call waterless. It's one of their brands now. And what they did recently was they called 20 other people in their peer group, and they shared that technology. Fabulous. EVs, that the judgment on electric vehicles is out there because you don't know what it's going to do to to landfills. But there are players like Solvay and Renault who were, with their expertise with lithium batteries and battery run cars, etc., they are teaching their peer group in terms of how do you forge ahead and recycle this stuff. So I think collaboration,
Absolutely.
we've not touched the tip of the iceberg, but there are lots of good stories to
I'll-
inspire us
yeah,
there.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm so sorry to having cut you short, but because in the interest of time, and I'm going to come to you both one after another, but the request is to keep the short responses very, very crisp and short. So we've heard about the requirement for partnership. We've understood the challenges. There are, of course, a lot of issues there. But Shaayak, very quickly, do we have enough solutions out there, particularly when we are depending so heavily on technology to solve so much of it for us? Do we have enough solutions around us to solve all the issues that we are facing?
I don't think it's a zero-sum game. I think there are enough solutions for everyone to get started. I think the main issue is not that we have to wait for like a silver bullet to come. I think companies need to start their journey wherever possible for them. So everyone, for example, every company in this room perhaps can actually measure and begin their journey at what is available to them with a quick win. Like renewable energy is a quick win. It's existed for years. Getting as many EVs as possible into your fleet, if you have that kind of emission profile, right, for your mobile emissions, that's a quick win. I think that we can't look for a greater number of solutions or the perfect solution. I think it's going to be a piecemeal of different initiatives that you have to take according to what's right for you. So I think it's very important.
To add, what are some of the other renewable energy is obvious. EVs are obvious to me. Is there more? Is there more to it?
Definitely. I think one interesting trend that perhaps I wanted to shed light on is material circularity. So I think material circularity and sustainable agriculture as well in India is something that we can really use as two interesting levers that are not as expensive as something like carbon capture. Carbon capture, the technology exists, but it's very expensive. It's not actually financially viable to reduce a large percentage of our emissions with carbon capture. But thinking about our waste disposal being, like Smita very rightly said, using it as an input good for another process, right, is something that we really need to invest time and effort in. And that is something that we can really look forward to. I think the panel has also spent a lot of time, even the previous panels discussing green hydrogen, something we're blessed with the solar generation capacity in India for. With the growth that is coming forward within India, right, it's something that the steel and cement sector should really embrace in producing their output and producing their goods. So I think these are three key technologies to keep an eye on in India.
Absolutely. Thanks, Shaayak, really for bringing highlight to it, because in my view, when I speak to a lot of leaders, they're like, there are enough solutions. We now need the intent to really implement and get, like you said, get started where you are. So coming to you, Anup. So we have an intent for partnerships, we have technologies there, solutions there. I want to come to you asking, since your nature of business is a little bit extractive or emitting, I could say there, and you have a deep experience of working with various stakeholders, including the governments and the financial institutions. I want to hear from you, what is their role in this, or how do you see them contributing positively, or are they being just neutral to it, are they supportive, as well as are financial institutions and the ecosystem around it supporting or incentivizing this whole trend for going towards carbon neutrality?
Yeah, Okay, so firstly the government, and then I'll come to the financial institutions aspect as far as L&T's experience is concerned. So on the government, as I had started to mention, that the thrust is very clear. The government itself has taken some very strong commitments on its on the impact the country will have on the environment, and a number of initiatives have also been rolled out. Be it the e-bus scheme, the thrust on renewable energy in terms of the support for solar power plants, the additional carbon sink you are talking about. The government of India is also committed to creating a 2.5 to 3 billion sort of tons of CO2 equivalent of carbon sink through reforestation and etc. A lot of railway electrification is underway. The government has also announced initiatives related to biofuels. It has announced last year the green open access for availability of renewable energy. So some of these things have also to be implemented, and I guess, and they require the support of the state governments, which I think are all going to happen in the near future. On the green hydrogen side, also there's a green hydrogen mission which has been set up some time back, and we are expecting certain guidelines to come from there also, which will give a thrust for production as well as a use of green hydrogens. All this is also having an impact on the wider corporate ecosystem, and I think all of us are aware as to some of the big companies in the country, how they are going after renewable energy, after electrolyzers, green hydrogen, EV penetration. Even companies which have had nothing to do with automobiles in the past are getting into EV production. So there are strong trends of the country's progress, and the government has been a big influencer, I would say, and I would also say that it will continue to support and progress on this line. Some insights I want to share, given the nature of our activity. We implement a lot of projects which help in climate change, be it green buildings, solar power plants. We are the biggest EPC player for solar power plants in the country and also in the Middle East. Also, if I extend it to clean energy, then hydropower, nuclear power, mass transit systems which help in reducing the impact on the climate. I would also include in this waste recycling and effluent treatment, all the water conservation projects and so on. All these things have a positive effect on the environment, including climate, but not necessarily limited to it. We track how much of our business comes from these kind of projects that we do for clients. And 3 years ago, only 20% of, by value, 20% of our projects were sort of in this space. And currently now 37% of our projects that we do is addresses the climate situation and also the water problem in the country. So which is a sign of how the country is moving and how more and more initiatives are being taken, despite all the concerns about lack of enough technology or renewable energy, which is not available round the clock. Therefore, hard to abate sectors are still finding it difficult to source RE. There are these problems are there, but I think as Shaayak probably mentioned that corporates are also trying out various experiments with the new technology. L&T itself is doing so with biofuels and with mobile battery storage units for our remote project sites. And I know that how to abate sectors are also trying out green hydrogen pilots and other initiatives. So while today they may not be scalable at a commercial level, but companies are trying out new things just to have their foot in the door, maybe in several doors at the same time, preparing themselves for the time when there is a technological breakthrough and there is a scale up, they can quickly take advantage of the situation and address the climate impact of their own business. Coming to the financial institution side, as a company, what we have seen is that investors, and I'm talking mainly of international investors, either they approach us directly or through their advisors and analysts who they engage. So their concern about the environment has certainly increased in the last couple of years or so. Before that, the discussion was mostly on the business side. But now there is a lot of discussion on the ESG aspects and within that on the climate side. So they do realize that, yes, we are in a developing economy and there will be growth, and for some time, emissions at an absolute level will increase. But therefore, they look for data metrics, and particularly on plans and actions and initiatives that are addressed at bringing down intensity levels, whether emission intensity or water intensity, or also in terms of waste generation and waste recycling and use. That is what we have experienced. So there is a lot of concern. They have their own footprint of their portfolio, carbon footprint of their portfolio, and they want to reduce it, or at least they want to go back to their boards and say there is a clear action plan amongst their debtors that they are going to bring down their footprint in a certain period of time. These are the kind of discussions that we have with financial institutions. So all around there is a concern for climate, and there is going to be push from all sides for companies to show change.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Anup, for sharing this. I think financial institutions are doing their bit in that case, trying to monitor and incentivize. So thank you, everyone. On that note, I'm going to, of course, we have overrun the time, so we are going to close the panel. And I know we don't have any time for Q&A, so the speakers are around, and you should definitely catch up with them and have your offline discussions. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to each of our panelists this afternoon.